Hello everyone! Welcome back to Learn English with Fatima. Today I'm going to teach you about relative clauses, also known as adjective clauses. For this lesson, I'll be focusing specifically on restrictive relative clauses. Don't worry if you don't know what any of this means yet. I will go over everything in detail. First, let's talk about clauses. What on earth is a clause? A clause is a group of words that contain a subject and a verb. They can form a simple sentence, or they can be only part of a sentence. For example, the boy runs is a clause. It is also a simple sentence. That is driving is a clause, but it is not a complete sentence. There are many types of clauses. Main clauses, dependent clauses, relative clauses, noun clauses, adverbial clauses, conditional clauses, and so on. But in this video, we will just focus on two: a main clause and a relative clause. A main clause is the meat of our sentence. It is the substance. It is a clause that forms a complete sentence on its own. It makes sense by itself. For example, the horse eats grass. So what is a relative clause? A relative clause gives us more information about the subject of our main clause. A relative clause does not make sense on its own. When we use the term restrictive relative clause, we are just saying that the information we are giving about the noun of the main clause is something that's important for the sentence to make sense. Here are a couple of examples of restrictive relative clauses, just so that you can see what they look like. I returned the keys that I borrowed. The teacher talked to the students who failed the test. I want an apartment that has a view. All of the words that are in purple are the relative clause of the sentence, and all of the words in black are the main clause of the sentence. Let's break it down so that we can better understand the parts. Let's talk a little more about the restrictive part of a relative clause so you can better understand. For example, if I said, "Bring me the book," or if I said, "Bring me the book that is on the table," which sentence is going to get me the book I need? The first sentence, "Bring me the book," could get me any book. The second sentence tells you exactly the book I'm asking for. Or what about the sentence, "We like the house"? We like the house that we looked at this morning. That we looked at this morning is the relative clause. The restrictive relative clause tells us information that is essential for the main subject. I will do another lesson on non-restrictive relative clauses in more detail, but the biggest difference is that non-restrictive relative clauses also provide more information about our main noun, but that information isn't essential. It's just extra information. Back to restrictive clauses. We can think of a restrictive relative clause as information to answer the question, which one? Let's look at this example. Can you give me the phone number of the woman? If we say which one or which woman, can you give me the phone number of the woman who hit my car? Who hit my car is a relative clause and is giving us vital information about the woman whose phone number we are looking for. Let's talk a little bit about relative pronouns. Restrictive relative clauses start with a relative pronoun. Relative pronouns that restrictive clauses use are who, which, and that. For people, we use who or that, and for things, we can also use that or we can use which. For example, the woman who cooks, the man that plays the piano, the car that is blue, the house which is for sale. For relative clauses, we follow this formula. The subject of the main clause plus the relative pronoun plus the rest of the relative clause and then the rest of the main clause. For example, the boy who we saw studying is smart. The boy is the subject of the main clause. Who is the relative pronoun of the relative clause. We saw studying is the rest of the relative clause. And then is smart is the rest of the main clause. Let's look at another one. Here we have the dog that barks is loud. The dog is the subject of our main clause. The relative pronoun is that. Barks is the rest of the relative clause. And is loud is the rest of the main clause. One more example. The car, which is parked, is mine. The car is the subject of our main clause. Which is our relative pronoun of our relative clause. Is parked is the rest of our relative clause. And is mine is the rest of our main clause. The relative pronoun that we use, who, that, or which, can be the subject or object of the relative clause. The man who runs there is very fast. The car that is parked outside is expensive. These are examples of the relative pronoun being the subject of the relative clause. Here are examples of the relative pronoun being the object of the relative clause. The purse that she bought is green. That is the pronoun for the purse. She bought the purse, so in the relative clause, that is the object. The woman who you saw is working. Again, who is the object? Because you saw who? The woman. If the relative pronoun is the object, the relative pronoun is optional and we don't have to include it. Often in spoken English, we will shorten the sentence by leaving this pronoun out. The purse that she bought is green can also be said as the purse she bought is green. You will hear this more often. Or, my friend who you met is a doctor can become, my friend you met is a doctor. One other important point I will note, and this is a common mistake for new English users, is that the verb in our relative clause must match the subject of our main clause. For example, the students that are reading need a break. Students is the subject of our main clause, so the verb in our relative clause, here it's are, has to match students. We cannot say The students that is reading need a break. This is incorrect. Congratulations for making it this far. Today we've covered what clauses are, we've covered relative pronouns, and we've covered what restrictive relative clauses are. Don't forget to subscribe for my future video about other types of clauses. See you then! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other grammar videos on my channel.